Get out, Samuel. I mean it. You were just the help. Nothing more. The words sliced through the air, cold and sharp like a blade pressed to the throat of a memory. Samuel Carter stood by the front door of the modern three-story home in Pacific Heights, San Francisco, with a weathered leather duffel bag in one hand, the other still holding the house keys that no longer belonged to him. His 29-year-old adoptive daughter, Claire Bennett, stood at the base of the grand staircase, arms crossed tightly across her designer blazer, her voice trembling, but not from sadness. It was rage laced with embarrassment. Claire's fiancé, Ethan Walsh, lounged on the Italian leather sectional, behind her legs, crossed sipping from a crystal tumbler of bourbon as if watching a drama unfold on stage. His smirk was barely concealed. Finally, he muttered, swirling the glass, "It's about time you cut that cord." Samuel didn't respond right away. He looked around the living room, the one he had painted himself during Claire's first semester in law school. He remembered patching that drywall near the fireplace after Claire's high school graduation party, remembered placing her framed baby photos on those shelves with care. But now all of them were gone, replaced by sleek sculptures, sterile decor, and a coldness that had nothing to do with design. Claire's voice rose. "I'm not a child anymore, Samuel. I'm a successful lawyer. I live here with my fiancé. This house, this life, doesn't have room for what, Claire?" He asked, his voice quiet but steady. "For someone who changed your diapers, helped you practice your closing arguments at midnight, worked security shifts he was too old for, so you'd never feel less than the girls at your prep school. For someone who doesn't belong in our world," Ethan interrupted, adjusting the $30,000 watch on his wrist. "It's not personal, man. It's about image. Claire's career is taking off, and appearances matter." Claire flinched at his bluntness, but didn't disagree. "The partners at my firm already ask weird questions. One of them thought you were my driver." She laughed nervously, then stopped. "They don't get it. They won't. And honestly, I don't want to explain anymore." Samuel looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to see through the person standing in front of him to find the little girl he once knew, the one who used to fall asleep on his chest during storms, the one who called him Papa Sam before she even knew what adoption meant. But she was gone. "I never asked for thanks," he said, shifting the duffel over his shoulder. "But I hoped for something else. Maybe that you'd remember who I was to you, who I still am." Claire turned her back and walked toward the kitchen. "Just leave, and take those old pictures with you. They don't match the aesthetic." Ethan chuckled. "Aesthetic," he repeated, pleased with the word. "You heard the lady?" Samuel's eyes fell to a small frame left behind on the entryway table. It was Claire, maybe 5 years old, missing teeth, grinning up at him in a photo booth strip from the county fair. He picked it up, brushed the dust off the glass, and tucked it into his coat pocket. "You forgot one," he murmured. He opened the front door, the California sunlight spilling across the threshold like a final curtain call. He didn't expect Claire to stop him. She didn't. His phone buzzed as he stepped off the porch. A text from Claire. "Also, please clear out the garage by this weekend. Ethan wants to convert it into a gym. Don't leave anything behind, and don't show up at my office again. Thanks. No punctuation. No goodbye." Samuel stood by his old Toyota pickup for a moment, the keys resting in his palm, feeling heavier than they had any right to. Then he got in, started the engine, and drove. He didn't look back. What Claire didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that the man they had just kicked out wasn't leaving empty-handed. He was leaving with a plan, and a secret that was about to change everything. The road out of Pacific Heights wound down into the older neighborhoods, where the homes were smaller, the sidewalks cracked, and no one cared what car you drove or who your daughter was marrying. Samuel pulled into the tiny parking lot behind a modest corner cafe, one of the few places in the city that hadn't changed in 20 years. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside, and the smell of burnt coffee and old vinyl booths wrapped around him like an old coat. Behind the counter, a man in a black security uniform looked up. His eyes widened, then lit up with recognition. "Sam? No way. Sam Carter." Samuel smiled faintly. "Hey, Jamal." They embraced like men who hadn't seen each other in a decade, but still remembered every mile walked together. Jamal Rivers had once scrubbed office floors with Samuel during graveyard shifts back when both of them were juggling bills and babies. Now he ran his own small security company, wore a badge with his name on it, and still made time for morning coffee at the same spot. "You still look good, man," Jamal said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Older, but good. How's Claire?" Samuel exhaled slowly, letting the silence do the talking. He stirred his coffee without tasting it. "That's why I'm here." He told Jamal everything. The screaming, the humiliation, Ethan's smug face. The garage she wanted erased like it had never been poured brick by his own hands. Jamal shook his head in disbelief. "Damn, that girl used to hang off your back like a koala. I remember you skipping dinner to buy her textbooks." "What happened?" "She forgot," Samuel said simply. "Or maybe she just chose not to remember." They sat in silence for a while, the clink of mugs and low jazz humming through the cafe speakers. Then Jamal leaned forward. "You sure you're all right, brother?" Samuel reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. A few taps, a quick login. Then he turned the screen around. Jamal blinked, then blinked again. "Is that real?" he whispered. On the screen was an investment portfolio, clean, steady, valued at over $5.5 million. 15 years ago, I took the settlement money from my brother's accident, Samuel said. Didn't spend it, didn't even touch it, put it into a tech startup no one believed in. I studied the market in secret, took more night shifts than I could count so I'd never need to pull from it. I wanted Claire to love me for who I was, not what I had. And now Jamal asked. Samuel tucked the phone away. Now I know the truth. Jamal stared at him, then laughed, not out of amusement, but out of disbelief. So what now? You disappear. Ride off into the sunset. Samuel looked out the cafe window where a bus stop advertisement showed a grinning real estate developer boasting about luxury condos coming soon. No, he said. I don't disappear. I evolve. Jamal raised an eyebrow. Into what? A quiet storm, Samuel said, voice steady. They wanted me out of their life because I was an eyesore in their world. So now I'll show them what it looks like when that eyesore becomes the man their world answers to. He pulled a napkin from the dispenser and scribbled down a name and number. Call this guy tomorrow. Don't mention my name. Just tell him you've got a client with capital looking to invest in the Bay Area. Jamal looked at the name. Harrison and Avery, one of the most exclusive wealth management firms in California. You're serious? Samuel smiled the same way a man does when he finally plays the ace he's been holding for years. I'm not here to ruin their lives, he said. I'm here to build something so powerful, so real, they'll realize too late what they threw away. And as the cafe filled with morning light, Samuel Carter finished his cold coffee, stood up, and walked out not as a broken father, but as a man reborn with purpose and a plan. 3 days later, a quiet shift swept across San Francisco's financial district. No press releases, no headlines, just a discreet appointment booked under a generic client code at Harrison and Avery, a firm that rarely dealt with anyone worth less than 8 figures. Samuel walked into the glass and steel skyscraper, wearing a tailored charcoal suit, no labels, no flash. But something about the way he moved, the calm confidence in his eyes, made the receptionist sit up straighter. She offered him a glass of water, then dialed a direct line. Mr. Avery, your 2 o'clock is here. Jonathan Avery greeted him personally, tall, impeccably dressed, a man who made his money helping the rich become richer, but with just enough humanity left to recognize something rare when it walked through his door. Mr. Carter, he said, extending a hand. Pleasure. I've reviewed your portfolio. Impressive, extremely disciplined. Samuel shook his hand firmly. I was lucky early on, but I believe luck favors those who prepare. Avery smiled, gesturing toward the window-lined conference room. Shall we? They sat, portfolios open between them, city skyline glittering in the background. Samuel didn't waste time. I don't want yachts or private islands. I want impact. I want to build something that matters. Avery raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Go on. I want to create a scholarship program, Samuel said, for underprivileged youth. Not just tuition, mentorship, housing, real-world support. And I want to fund 3 community centers across the Bay Area. Avery blinked. This wasn't the usual tech mogul vanity project. It was focused, purposeful. I assume you'll want to maintain discretion, he asked. Samuel nodded. For now. Avery leaned forward. There's a gala next month. Beverly Hills Country Club. Best place to meet serious philanthropists, influential legal minds, community leaders. Samuel's eyes didn't move, but something in them flickered. Who attends these things, he asked casually. Avery pulled up a digital guest list. The usual. Top attorneys, CEOs, and, yes, right here, Claire Bennett, partner track at one of the biggest firms in LA. Her fiancé, Ethan Walsh, is also listed. Samuel's expression didn't change, but inside something settled. I'd like to be there, he said. Avery nodded. We'll make the arrangements. Under which name shall I list you? Samuel glanced at the folder in front of him, then closed it. Samuel Carter's fine. Let's keep things simple. That evening, just a few miles away, Claire sipped champagne at a rooftop event hosted by her firm. She wore her title like armor, Bennett Rising Star of Litigation. When a junior associate asked about her unusual upbringing, Claire smiled politely and said, "Oh, that was a long time ago. I've moved on." Ethan joined her at the bar, wrapping a possessive arm around her waist. Did I hear someone mention your dad? He asked with a chuckle. Or whatever he was. Claire stiffened. Let's not. But the words clung to her anyway, like fog that refused to lift. Back in the financial district, Samuel sat in a quiet lounge inside the firm reviewing documents. He wasn't rushing. He didn't need to. Everything was in motion. The scholarship fund had already been approved. The first donation, $200,000, would be announced at the gala, and his presence would be felt in every room, every whisper. For years he had built silently. Now he would emerge not out of vengeance, but out of vision. He wasn't interested in punishment. He was interested in legacy. And as the lights of the city shimmered against the night sky, Samuel Carter leaned back in his chair, not as the man who'd once been cast aside, but as the man everyone would soon be talking about. They just didn't know it yet. The night of the gala arrived with the kind of elegance only money could orchestrate. The Beverly Hills Country Club, usually reserved for weddings and elite fundraisers, was unrecognizable. Washed in soft golden light, its walls lined with fresh orchids and crystal sconces. Valets opened car doors like clockwork. Cameramen circled like hawks, snapping photos of tailored tuxedos and couture gowns. Claire stepped out of a red Porsche in an $8,000 dress custom-made for the occasion. Her hand rested delicately in Ethan's as they climbed the steps, their every move calculated for the cameras. She smiled, poised every inch, the woman who had finally outrun her past. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed. Waiters floated through the room with champagne flutes balanced on silver trays. A jazz trio played near the bar. Guests mingled over talk of hedge funds and real estate deals. A few whispered about the mysterious benefactor behind the evening's event, an anonymous donor funding a 7-figure community initiative. Claire hadn't paid much attention. It was just another event, another chance to impress the right people, cement her position, network her way higher. Feels like our kind of crowd, Ethan whispered, his hand on the small of her back. No awkward surprises tonight. She smiled, but something about his words lodged in her chest. She couldn't explain it, just a flicker of unease that came and went like a shadow at the corner of her vision. At precisely 8 o'clock, a spotlight lit the grand staircase. The crowd quieted. Jonathan Avery stepped forward in a crisp tuxedo, holding a wireless mic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening, he began, voice rich and practiced. Tonight is not about status. It's not about wealth. It's about vision. One man's vision, to be exact. A man who chose to invest not in buildings or portfolios, but in people. Claire listened, only half attentive, swirling her wine. And now Avery continued. I have the honor of introducing the individual who made all of this possible. Please join me in welcoming a man of great humility, resilience, and generosity, Mr. Samuel Carter. Claire froze. The name crashed through her like a tidal wave, knocking the air from her lungs. Her glass slipped slightly in her hand. Ethan's head whipped toward her. Wait, did he say? But the rest of his sentence was swallowed by a growing murmur. Samuel emerged at the top of the staircase, calm and composed in a classic black tuxedo. He walked down with measured grace, the way a man does when he knows who he is. No longer someone standing in the shadows. Tonight, the spotlight belonged to him. The applause began tentative at first, then thunderous. Claire didn't clap. She couldn't move. Samuel reached the stage, thanked Avery, and turned to the crowd. "Good evening," he said, his voice warm but clear. "I never imagined I'd be standing here tonight among so many people who shape the future of this city. But I've learned something in life sometimes. We're forced out of one world so we can step into another." He paused, letting his words breathe. "I've spent over 2 decades investing in a life, not just in stocks or real estate, but in raising someone, loving someone, believing that what you give comes back." Claire could feel the blood drain from her face. Samuel scanned the room but didn't seek her eyes. "Recently, I was reminded that love doesn't always get returned the way you hope, and that sometimes people forget what was done for them when they're too busy building a version of themselves they think the world wants." The room was silent now. Even the waiters had stopped moving. "But I'm not here for sympathy," he continued. "I'm here to create change. Real change. Tonight's scholarships and community centers are just the beginning." He stepped back, letting the applause rise again, louder this time, filled with something closer to admiration. Claire stood frozen, heart pounding. Ethan leaned in and hissed, "That's him, isn't it? The one you kicked out?" She didn't answer, because suddenly nothing she could say would change what everyone in that room now knew. Samuel Carter wasn't an embarrassment. He was the most powerful man in the building. Claire barely remembered how she got through the rest of that evening. Faces blurred, voices turned hollow. Every glass of champagne tasted like shame. As guests crowded around Samuel, shaking his hand, thanking him, praising his vision, Claire and Ethan drifted further into the background like ornaments no longer meant to shine. By the time they reached the car, Claire's cheeks ached from pretending, and her hands trembled as she slipped into the passenger seat. Ethan slammed the door harder than necessary. "What the hell was that?" She stared straight ahead. "Claire, answer me. Did you have any idea he was—" "No," she said quietly, almost too softly to hear. "I thought he was just—" "No," Ethan scoffed, bitter. "Well, congratulations. You just got publicly humiliated by a janitor in a tuxedo." Her head whipped toward him. "He wasn't just a janitor." "Oh, so now you remember," Ethan snapped. The silence that followed was colder than any insult. That night he didn't come home with her. The next morning Claire woke up to headlines, photos, social media posts going viral. Anonymous philanthropist revealed as adoptive father cast aside by rising legal star. The clips from the gala were everywhere: Samuel's speech, her frozen expression, Ethan's outburst. She opened her inbox to find 24 messages from her firm. The subject line on the final one read, "Temporary leave pending review." By noon, Ethan had sent a text. "My family thinks it's best we postpone the wedding. I need space. This is hurting my name." No apology, no call, just distance, and then nothing. In 48 hours, Claire had lost her job, her fiancé, and the last shreds of the image she'd spent years crafting. The condo she once bragged about felt cavernous and cold. The wine in her fridge tasted like metal. Everything she touched reminded her of who she was pretending to be and who she had pushed away to become it. That afternoon, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something, curiosity, guilt, desperation, made her swipe. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then Claire. "It's Samuel," her breath caught. "I'm not calling to reopen old wounds," he said, his voice steady, but not cold. "I know things have changed for you. I just wanted to make you an offer." Claire sat up straighter, unsure what she was hearing. "What kind of offer?" "A job. At the foundation. Entry level. No perks. No favors. Just work that matters." She blinked. "You'd... After everything—" "I'm not offering you redemption," he said. "That's something you'll have to earn. But I'm offering you a start. You'll work with the kids, hear their stories, help them get opportunities, and maybe over time, you'll understand what it really means to build something that lasts." There was no judgment in his tone, no pity, just truth. I don't know if I can do that," she whispered. "Then don't promise me anything," Samuel said gently. "Just show up." The line clicked off. Claire sat in the silence for a long while, phone still pressed to her ear. Then for the first time in weeks, she walked to her closet and chose something simple. No labels, no designer heels. The next morning, she walked into the Carter Foundation headquarters, nervous, uncertain, but standing on her own 2 feet. No cameras, no red carpet. Just a clipboard, a desk, and a waiting room full of kids who didn't care about her past, only about whether she'd helped them build a future. And for the first time in her life, Claire Bennett wasn't trying to rise. She was learning how to lift. 6 months passed, and Claire never once asked for a title. She arrived early each morning, brewed coffee for the staff, made photocopies, filed paperwork, and sat with applicants as they filled out their scholarship forms, most of them nervous, many of them unsure they even deserved to be there. She listened more than she spoke. Some days were quiet, some were hard, but none were wasted. One afternoon, as winter softened into spring, she sat across from a 17-year-old named Malik. His voice cracked as he described the long bus rides he took every day to help his mom at her second job. His grades were strong, but he didn't believe they mattered. No one in his family had ever gone to college. Claire leaned in gently. "You don't have to carry your whole world alone, Malik. Let us help you carry it for a while." He looked at her like she'd spoken in a language he hadn't heard before, one that didn't come with judgment, just belief. When he left application in hand, he turned back at the door. "Thanks, Miss Claire. This might change my life." The words hit her like a pulse. She sat still long after he'd gone, his voice echoing in her mind. Because in that moment she realized this was what Samuel had been doing all those years. Quietly, constantly, without applause or acknowledgement. And she had spent so long trying to escape it, not realizing it was the most meaningful work of all. That evening, as the office lights dimmed and the staff packed up, Samuel appeared in the hallway, hands in his pockets, watching her finish organizing a stack of new applicant files. He didn't say anything at first, just leaned against the doorframe, his presence calm but grounded. She noticed him and smiled, a soft, honest smile that didn't carry the stiffness of old pride. "How's Malik doing?" he asked. "He's scared," she said. "But hopeful." Samuel nodded. "That's the sweet spot, hopeful and scared. That's where real growth begins." She set the files down and walked toward him, unsure what she wanted to say. But then the words just came. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Samuel's face didn't shift much, but his eyes, there was warmth there, a quiet kind of relief. "People get lost sometimes," he said, "but the ones who want to find their way back, they do." There was a beat of silence. Then Claire added softly, "You know, I used to think you didn't belong in my world. Now I realize I never really understood yours." He chuckled gently. "It was never mine. I just tried to build a bridge into it for you." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't from guilt. They were from knowing how much had been given and how deeply it had been misunderstood. "I want to keep doing this," she said, "not just as a job. I want to be part of something real, something that heals people." Samuel smiled. "Then keep showing up." And she did. Over the following months, Claire led workshops, helped design mentorship programs, and started visiting local schools to speak to students about possibility, about failure, about second chances. She never brought up her past unless asked, but when she did, she spoke of it plainly, like a scar that had healed not to be hidden, but to remind her of what it meant to truly change. The Carter Foundation grew more donations, more staff, more kids walking through the doors, believing maybe someone saw them. And among them, Claire saw herself. Not the girl who once kicked her father out, but the woman who had found her way back, not through apologies, through purpose. 2 years later, Samuel stood behind a podium at Harvard University, his voice steady as it echoed through the grand auditorium. The room was packed with students, faculty, and business leaders. But he wasn't here for prestige. He was here to tell the truth. "I used to think the best kind of success was proving someone wrong," he began. "But I've learned that the best kind of success is proving that love, patience, and integrity are stronger than pride and rejection." In the front row, Claire sat with her hands folded, listening intently. She was no longer hiding from her story. She had become part of its strength. Samuel continued sharing his journey from forgotten worker to founder of one of the most impactful education foundations in the country. He spoke about the thousands of scholarship recipients now attending college, the new community centers, built in underserved neighborhoods, and the children who now had mentors because someone finally believed they were worth showing up for. But more than that, he spoke about healing. Forgiveness, he said, isn't just about freeing someone else. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of who they used to be, or who you used to be. Applause rippled through the room, not loud, not performative, just full of quiet reverence. After the event, Claire joined him outside where the autumn air was crisp and the crowd had begun to thin. She wore a simple dark coat, nothing flashy, and clutched a stack of handwritten letters from students who had been helped by the foundation. "They asked me to deliver these to you," she said. "Most of them don't even know your face, but they know what you've done." Samuel took the letters carefully, his fingers brushing the edges like they were sacred. "I don't need to be known," he said. "I just want them to believe they're not invisible." Claire smiled. "They do, because you saw them before anyone else did." They walked in silence for a moment past the ivy-covered buildings and students rushing to their next class. Claire stopped beneath a tall oak and looked up at her father. "Do you ever wish it had happened differently?" she asked. Samuel thought about that, about the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation. But then he looked at her, not just standing there, but grounded, changed. "No," he said finally, "because if it had, you might never have become this version of you." She nodded slowly, absorbing that truth. That night back in San Francisco, the Carter Foundation held its annual gala, not at a country club, but at a converted warehouse-turned-arts center in the heart of a low-income neighborhood. There were no paparazzi, no designer gowns, just stories, laughter, students walking across the stage to accept the opportunities they once believed were out of reach. Claire stood at the edge of the room watching one of the scholarship recipients hug his mother. Her eyes welled with tears, not from sadness, but from something deeper grace. Samuel joined her, sipping a cup of coffee, as casual as if they were still in that tiny cafe from years ago. "She reminds me of you," he said, nodding at a young girl giving a speech about being the first in her family to go to college. Claire took a breath, feeling the weight of the past but also its release. "I used to think redemption was something you beg for," she said. "Now I know it's something you live into." Samuel didn't reply right away, but his hand reached over and gently rested on hers. "That's my girl," he whispered. No camera captured that moment. No headline printed it. But in that quiet, unremarkable second, the story found its real ending. Not revenge, not glory, but restoration. The kind that can only grow in the soil of humility, watered by time